You know that feeling, right? You plan a healthy dinner. Next thing you know, pizza's on the way.
Oh, yeah. Or you decide, okay, less screen time tonight.
And suddenly it's midnight and you're still scrolling. It's that constant push and pull. What you want to do versus what feels good right now.
It's incredibly powerful.
Mm.
Happens to all of us. And right at the heart of that impulse, that drive for the immediate thing, is dopamine.
Dopamine, yeah. Everyone calls it the reward chemical, but this book we're diving into, the dopamine brain, it really makes it clear it's more complicated than just feeling good.
Much more. Take that donut example they use. It's not just the dopamine hit when you bite into it.
Right.
It's mainly fired up in the pursuit, when you're anticipating it, when you see it, maybe even just thinking about how good the last one was.
So it's the brain saying, go get that. Remember that, go.
Exactly. It's the engine driving the wanting, the seeking.
And that drive, it's fast, it's automatic. Often you don't even notice it consciously. And which, brings up this huge question we want to explore today. How much control do we actually have? Are we really in charge, or are these like ancient urges steering the ship most of the time?
That's the core tension, isn't it? So our mission here really is to pull out the most important insights from the dopamine brain, give you a shortcut to understanding that dopamine drive.
Understand the conflict it creates between pleasure right now and maybe longer-term purpose.
Exactly. And crucially, find some practical ways you can build behavioral control so you can live a life that feels more aligned with what really matters to you.
Okay, let's get into it. What is dopamine? The book starts with the basics. It's a neurotransmitter.
A chemical messenger made of really basic stuff, actually oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen.
And it's ancient. Like primitive lizards had it millions of years ago. It's not just us.
Right, which tells you how fundamental it is. For humans, for animals, it's crucial for learning, for reinforcing behaviors that lead to rewards. It shapes what we seek out.
And it's tied to the reward system, but the key job is motivating the seeking, driving the hunt.
Yes. Think evolutionarily. That seeking drive, absolutely critical for survival.
Hunting, finding food, shelter.
Finding mates. Without that push, that motivation, we probably wouldn't be here. It literally drove our species forward.
And where in the brain is this happening? The book mentions dopamine pathways are really dense in the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, the bit responsible for planning, reasoning, problem solving, our sort of higher thought center.
It's involved in things like ADHD there too, right? Though we won't go too deep into that specifically.
Right. But its presence there is interesting because that's our thinking brain, where we make conscious choices.
Yet the dopamine drive often just bypasses it. It's quick, unconscious.
That's the paradox. Which brings us back to free will and how much we really have.
And our modern world, it feels like it's created a perfect storm for this ancient system.
Oh, completely. Instant gratification is just everywhere, and it's engineered to be frictionless.
Think about it. Online shopping. Your details are saved, Face ID, next day delivery.
Streaming shows that just autoplay the next episode. You don't even have to click.
Food delivery apps. Endless choice. Arrives in like 30 minutes.
Ride shares you summon instantly. And our phones. Always there. Packed with games, texts, social media, news feeds designed to just keep you scrolling.
Swipe, Face ID, bang, you're in. Even AI tools, Siri, ChatGPT, they respond immediately.
It's a world basically built to constantly trigger those dopamine pathways. Convenience, speed, immediate reward.
It's fascinating, too. The book briefly touches on how long we've been curious about the brain. Like the Edwin Smith papyrus from ancient Egypt.
Yeah, around 1600 BCE, they're already documenting brain injuries, noticing symptoms like speech problems, seizures.
Even recognizing laterality, that the brain has two sides doing different things.
So this fascination isn't new, but our environment interacting with these deep, ancient pathways, that presents a unique challenge today.
And part of the challenge is the brain itself, right? It seeks balance, homeostasis.
Exactly. It's not designed for a constant dopamine high. So when those reward pathways get hit too often, too intensively,
The brain adapts.
it changes its sensitivity. It might reduce dopamine production or receptors to try and regulate things, dial it down.
Which is tolerance, needing more and more to get the same feeling.
Precisely. And that rising tolerance, plus that powerful, often unconscious drive to seek, well, that's where the risk of problematic behaviors, even addiction, starts to creep in.
The book makes a really important point here, distinguishing between harm and clinical addiction.
Absolutely vital. You don't need an official diagnosis to be experiencing serious negative consequences.
Like someone might gamble occasionally, not be clinically addicted, but still get into financial trouble, or strain relationships.
Exactly. That's gambling-related harm. Or maybe drinking alcohol doesn't lead to dependence, but causes you to be late for work often, perform poorly. That's harm.
Spending hours scrolling social media, maybe not an addiction, but it makes you less present with family, more distracted.
Yep. Reduces the quality of your real-life interactions. Even, consistently eating too much sugary food causes health harm, even if it's not a diagnosed eating disorder.
So it's about the negative impact, regardless of the label. And dopamine is driving that compulsive seeking underneath it all.
It drives the initial pull and then keeps the cycle going. And the book mentions that optimism bias, the "it won't happen to me" thing.
We tend to underestimate the risks.
Yeah, when we engage in these behaviors that feel good in the moment.
Okay, let's look at some specifics from the book. Alcohol, for instance. It's so common, often seen as just harmless fun.
But the source lays out some pretty stark facts. The World Health Organization now says there's basically no safe level of alcohol consumption.
Really?
No safe level.
That's their current stance. The issue is the ethanol itself.
It affects the nervous system. It's a depressant.
Hence the slurred speech, unsteadiness.
Impaired thinking, yeah. And crucially, the book points out it's a group 1 carcinogen.
Group 1,
like asbestos, tobacco, radiation. It's linked to at least 7 types of cancer. And doesn't matter if it's cheap wine or fancy champagne, it's the ethanol.
wow. Okay. What about poker machines? The book calls them highly addictive.
Their design is just a masterclass in dopamine manipulation. They use intermittent reinforcement.
The unpredictable wins.
Exactly. Keeps that seeking drive firing constantly. Plus, fast, continuous play, immediate feedback, flashing lights, sounds, it all hooks you.
And winning big early on is a major risk factor.
Huge. It cements that idea of a big payoff. Shifts you from maybe enjoying the game to just compulsively wanting to win, chasing losses. Much more addictive than, say, a lottery ticket because of the speed and that constant feedback loop.
And social media, designed to be reinforcing too, I assume.
Absolutely. Developers consciously use psychology. The book mentions tricks like maybe holding back likes or notifications.
Oh, really?
Yeah, then releasing them in a burst. That unpredictability primes the dopamine system, and then bam, sudden influx of social approval. Potent stuff.
And the endless scroll takes away any friction.
Removes the need for an active choice. You just keep going. It facilitates this sort of trance-like state, keeping you hooked longer. It works on the same intermittent reinforcement schedule as gambling, essentially.
Online shopping too, with endless choice, deals, countdown timers.
Gamification features, yeah. Sites like Temu or Shein mentioned in the book are experts at this. Triggers dopamine, keeps you coming back. The story of Sally spending way beyond her means really highlights the potential harm.
Video games operate similarly. Rewards, achievements.
Definitely. Trophies, leaderboards, that sense of accomplishment all activate reward pathways. Instant rewards, quick feedback, immersive stories, escapism. Very engaging.
And pornography. The book notes it triggers dopamine, can become problematic, harmful, even without a universally agreed diagnosis.
Yes, it definitely triggers dopamine release. While a formal diagnosis might be debated, overuse can cause serious harm when it starts reinforcing those reward, motivation, memory circuits in a compulsive way.
It's so clear how easily our modern world taps into this drive. But the book pivots here, doesn't it? Asking, okay, is a life just chasing these instant pleasures actually fulfilling?
Right. This brings in that ancient Greek idea of 2 kinds of happiness. Hedonic, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and eudaimonic, finding meaning, purpose, growth.
And the book argues, just chasing the hedonic stuff. Spending, scrolling, gaming, donuts.
It leads to happiness that's, well, shallow, short-lived. It doesn't really build deep, lasting fulfillment.
So the goal isn't ditching pleasure altogether, it's finding a balance, pleasure and purpose.
Precisely. They're not enemies. A truly rich life integrates both. The client stories in the book show this so well, like Gary.
The successful guy, hedonic lifestyle.
Yeah, fancy apartment, cars, travel, parties, lots of pleasure. But he felt empty, no real purpose.
And the outcome.
Depressed, lonely, disconnected. Friendships felt superficial. So he started adding eudaimonic elements, reconnecting with his cultural community, attending events, donating time.
Finding meaning.
Exactly. Gave him connection, purpose. He naturally spent less time just chasing pleasure, felt more connected, his mood improved, It wasn't about eliminating fun, but finding his right mix.
And then there was Sandra, the opposite case.
Right, the social worker, advocate, loads of purpose, meaning in her life, very eudaimonic,
Yeah.
burnt out, tired, flat. She was missing simple, pure pleasure. Time just for fun, unrelated to her meaningful work.
So her balance involved?
Adding purely hedonic activities, watercolor painting, watching comedy specials, things just to unwind, just for enjoyment.
The author's own story about that trip, the karaoke night, versus connecting with the Aboriginal family, hits that point too.
Perfectly. One was fun, social connection, maybe a little dopamine hit from posting about it. The other was deep, meaningful connection, learning, warmth, gratitude, true fulfillment.
Different kinds of happiness.
And having both made it a great day, a rich experience.
So the takeaway isn't that scrolling or donuts are inherently bad. It's about our relationship with them.
Exactly. When do they become automatic? Excessive? When do they start costing us time and energy we'd rather spend on things that align with our deeper values? That's when conscious choice becomes crucial.
And to make those conscious choices, you need to know what you're aiming for, which is where values come in.
Yes. The book frames values as your internal compass, guiding you toward what's genuinely important beyond those fleeting impulses.
How are values different from, say, goals?
Values are ongoing. They're ways of being, like honesty or connection or health. They don't really have an endpoint. Goals are specific achievements you work towards, like running a marathon or getting a promotion.
But goals can be driven by values.
Absolutely. Paying off your mortgage could be a goal driven by values like financial security or maybe diligence. The values are the deeper why.
And where do our values come from? Are they always, truly ours?
Not always. That's a key point. We often internalize them from family, society, our workplace.
Like Belinda, the investment banker in the book.
Right. She totally bought into the hustle culture values of her firm, combined with family expectations about success and money.
And it led to burnout.
Because those weren't her core values deep down. She eventually found balance by figuring out what truly mattered to her, which involved prioritizing family and well-being alongside her career.
Shows the real cost of that misalignment. The book also mentions other influences, culture, religion.
Yeah, collectivist versus individualistic societies shape values differently. Religion or spirituality can be a huge source, and it touches on the challenges this can create, like culture clash for immigrants and their kids navigating different value systems.
So how do you figure out your own values? The book suggests some self-reflection.
Yeah, like brainstorming things that are important across different areas of life, work, relationships, personal growth. Asking yourself questions like, what do I want to stand for? What kind of person do I want to be? Imagining looking back on your life, what would make it feel meaningful?
What gives you that sense of purpose, not just fleeting pleasure?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Ben, the student of the book. He felt depressed and dissatisfied.
Despite doing well in school and sports.
Yeah, because he was chasing values.
Yeah.
Others prioritized for him hard work, financial stability, athletic success. But his core values were things like spontaneity, fun, family connection, adventure, creativity, kindness.
And he wasn't living those.
That misalignment was a big part of why he felt so stuck, turning to excessive gaming to cope.
So knowing your values is step one. But the book is really clear. Knowing isn't enough. You have to act on them.
That's where the rubber meets the road. Dissatisfaction often lives in that gap between what you say you value and what you actually do.
And those internal barriers can be huge, right? Self-doubt, limiting beliefs.
Oh yeah, I'm not good enough, I have no discipline, I'll never fit in. These thoughts can paralyze you, stop you from even trying to pursue goals that align with your values. It becomes a vicious cycle.
The book suggests focusing on maybe 5 to 10 core values to keep it manageable.
Yes, narrow it down, and then critically define what each value means to you personally. Adventure for me might be different than for you. Your own definition is the only one that motivates.
And there's that practical tool, the 4 questions process.
Right, for each key value. 1, what is it? 2, am I living it now? What gets in the way? 3, what am I already doing that aligns? Acknowledge the positives. 4, what else could I do, big or small, to align better?
That helps bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Find concrete actions.
Exactly, and it emphasizes looking for both big and small actions. It's not always about quitting your job. A weekend trip can align with adventure just as much as a 6-month trek, maybe even more sustainably. Small, consistent change is powerful.
Let's loop back to Ben. His solution wasn't drastic, was it?
Not at all. It was about small, deliberate adjustments to bring his life more into line with his values,
Like taking a break from intense running?
which maybe freed up time, reduced pressure, allowed for more spontaneity. He joined a social basketball team, hitting values like fun, connection,
Planned a surfing trip.
adventure, freedom, fun. He kept studying accounting, but saw a careers advisor to explore options aligning with growth, maybe still security, but more consciously.
And he started playing guitar again.
Yeah, dug it out, jammed with friends. That's creativity, spontaneity, connection right there.
And interestingly, by actively adding these positive, values-aligned things.
His desire to escape through gaming naturally decreased. He wasn't just stopping something, he was building something more compelling.
This leads nicely into another really profound idea in the book, the dialectic of acceptance and change.
Sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. It means two seemingly opposite things can both be true and are both necessary.
There are things we can change
Our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, how we respond to things,
and things we absolutely cannot change.
the past, other people's choices,
Mm-hmm.
the weather, death, reality as it is right now.
Like the Serenity Prayer captures.
Exactly. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's acceptance. The courage to change the things I can. That's change. And the wisdom to know the difference. We need both. Accepting what's outside our control stops us from banging our heads against a brick wall. Focusing our energy on what is within our control, our choices, our behavior is where our power lies.
Okay, so we've identified values. We understand the need for acceptance and change. Now, how do we actually build that control over the dopamine-driven habits, especially when we try to take a break and the urges hit?
This is where neuroplasticity comes in, and it's incredibly hopeful. The brain's amazing ability to rewire itself based on experience.
The book gives great examples, like London taxi drivers.
Yeah. Their posterior hippocampus involved in spatial memory actually get larger from learning the knowledge, all those complex roots.
Or people recovering from brain injuries, where undamaged parts of the brain learn to take over functions.
And Norman Deutsch's work has mentioned people overcoming paralysis, regaining hearing, and that incredible case of Maura Lieb thriving with basically half a brain after surgery. The remaining hemisphere just adapted and took over.
So the point is, if the brain can do that,
Then you can absolutely harness neuroplasticity to build new pathways aligned with your values, while letting those old, heavily reinforced dopamine pathways weaken from disuse. It's a two-pronged approach. Reset the chemistry a bit and actively build new behavioral habits.
but taking that initial break, abstaining from the behavior, that's hard. People resist, make excuses.
Oh, constantly. The book mentions myths about alcohol being relaxing or needing drugs to be creative,
Yeah.
parental expectations, things they read on TikTok.
Rationalizations.
Exactly. Ways the mind tries to protect the status quo because change feels uncomfortable, uncertain. The goal isn't to magically eliminate discomfort, but to build skills to manage it when it inevitably shows up.
How long does a break need to be? Is there a magic number?
No magic number, unfortunately. It depends on so many factors. The person, the behavior, how long it's been ingrained, frequency, biology. It will be unpleasant, especially at first. What matters most isn't just the time, but what you do during that break.
You can't just white-knuckle it.
Not effectively long-term. The goal is to use that time to learn from your internal experience, notice the thoughts, the feelings, the urges, and actively replace the old behavior with new, values-aligned actions. Not just swap one problem for another.
And a core skill for dealing with that discomfort is learning to just sit with it.
Yes, allowing yourself to feel unpleasant emotions or sensations. Sadness, anger, boredom, craving, without immediately reacting, pushing them away, or trying to escape them through the old habit.
It connects back to that CBT idea. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors are linked.
Right. If you change the behavior, take a break, it's going to stir up thoughts and feelings. The book encourages viewing these internal experiences almost like data.
Not good or bad, just information.
Exactly. Emotions evolved for a reason. They're adaptive. Fear signals potential danger. Nerves might mean what you're doing is important, like that concert pianist example. Anger can point to injustice. Sadness signals loss, maybe prompts connection. Guilt shows a conflict with your values, motivates repair.
Though sometimes emotions can be disproportionate, and that might need professional help.
Of course. But often, the initial feeling itself isn't the main problem. It's our struggle against it that causes extra suffering.
And the book says trying to constantly avoid or suppress feelings just doesn't work long term. What you resist persists.
That famous Carl Jung quote, Pushing feelings down often makes them pop up stronger later or in different ways. And it makes you more vulnerable to falling back into the old habit when discomfort arises. Learning to tolerate discomfort, even briefly, builds resilience.
Mindfulness is presented as a key practice here for riding the wave of urges or emotions.
Yes, it's an ancient practice, really, about paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment.
The book suggests starting simple, like observing an object.
Right. Notice its details, textures, colors. Then try applying that same curious, open, non-judgmental attention to your internal world. What thoughts are here? What sensations in the body? What emotions? What urges? Just noticing them, like clouds passing in the sky. You don't have to act on every urge the moment it appears.
There's that phrase, name it to tame it.
Dr. Daniel Siegel.
Mm.
The idea is that simply putting a label on an emotion, there's anxiety, or, okay, feeling, craving, engages the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain. This can actually help reduce the intensity coming from the more reactive limbic areas. Gives you a little distance.
Like Molly's story in the book, dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
Stuck in that why me loop.
Exactly.
Huh?
Mindfulness helped her separate the raw pain of the past trauma from the additional suffering she was creating by constantly ruminating and fighting it in the present. By learning to sit with the original discomfort, she could start living more fully again.
So understanding that urges and emotions are temporary and just noticing them without immediate reaction builds awareness and control. But what if an urge feels overwhelming, like right before a big meeting, you can't just sit and meditate?
Right. Sometimes you need more active strategies in the moment. That's where self-soothing comes in.
Deliberately calming the nervous system.
Yeah, activating the parasympathetic system.
Mm-hmm.
The book uses that five senses framework, which is really practical.
Okay, give us some examples. Sight.
Maybe dimming the lights, looking at beautiful nature photos or videos, coloring, watching a glitter jar settle.
Sound.
Calming music, nature sounds, white noise, maybe ASMR if that works for you, chanting, listening to singing bowls.
Touch.
Warmth is often good. A heat pack, warm bath, cozy blanket, weighted blankets can be great. Massage, soft fabrics, stress balls, fidget toys, slime.
Smell.
Aromatherapy, lavender, chamomile are classics. Scented candles, lotions, herbal pillows, even just brewing a calming tea. And comforting or nostalgic flavors. Warm drinks.
Yeah.
Mindfully eating a small piece of chocolate. Chewing gum. And you can mix and match. Have a few tools ready. Oliver, the client dealing with sex addiction, used intense, cold-holding ice cubes combined with loud music to ride out strong urges. Find what works for you.
Another strategy, consequence mapping.
Yes. When the urge hits hard, take a moment to actively list or review the negative consequences, practical and emotional, of giving in.
Like Oliver's list. Guilt, shame, isolation.
Impact on work, reputation, financial cost. Having that list handy, maybe on your phone or a card, and reading it during an urge can bring perspective back. Remind yourself why you're making the change.
And then there are place fillers. This sounds different from just distraction.
It is. It's crucial. A place filler isn't just any activity to take your mind off the urge. It's specifically choosing an activity that is linked to one of your core values.
So it does double duty. Manages the urge and moves you towards your desired life.
Exactly. You're not just swapping scrolling for binge watching. You're actively reinforcing who you want to be.
So if a value is creativity learning, instead of the unwanted behavior.
Maybe you practice guitar for 5 minutes, even if the goal is lessons. Or watch a relevant YouTube tutorial. Add songs to a creative playlist.
Value. Health fitness. Goal. Boot camp. Place filler.
Maybe do 10 squats or push-ups right then and there, a quick walk around the block.
Value. Spirituality. Goal. Attend services. Place filler.
Could be saying a short prayer, reading a relevant passage, listening to hymns. The idea is to have your own list of values-aligned place fillers ready to go. It's okay to use several. It grounds you back in your values and identity when the urge tries to pull you off track.
And finally, the book emphasizes self-compassion, especially when setbacks happen, which they inevitably do.
So important. It draws on Kristen Neff's work. Self-kindness, treating yourself with understanding, not harsh judgment, when you mess up. Common humanity, recognizing that everyone struggles, you're not alone in imperfection. And mindfulness, noticing the difficult feelings without getting totally overwhelmed by them.
Because beating yourself up is a huge relapse trigger.
Massive. Self-criticism just digs the hole deeper. Learning to be kind to yourself, acknowledging the difficulty, and holding the experience with awareness, research shows this builds resilience, improves mental health, and actually makes you more likely to get back on track.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive has really covered a lot, from understanding that basic dopamine drive, how ancient it is, how the modern world kind of hijacks it,
Right, through that conflict between seeking short-term pleasure and finding long-term purpose and meaning.
to the absolute necessity of identifying your own core values as a guide.
And finally, building that behavioral control.
Yeah.
Using acceptance, mindfulness, neuroplasticity, and those really practical strategies like self-soothing, consequence mapping, and values-based place fillers.
And the stories woven throughout Oliver, Ben, Belinda, Gary, Sandra, Molly, they really show this isn't just abstract theory. People use these ideas to make real changes.
It takes effort, it takes practice, it's often uncomfortable, but it is absolutely possible to change your relationship with these powerful impulses and build a life that feels more authentic and fulfilling.
And like the author notes, sometimes progress is quiet. No news is good news. People are just getting on with living more intentionally.
And the really empowering message, I think, is that you do have choices. Even when urges feel strong, even when emotions are difficult, you have agency in how you respond. You can learn to surf those waves.
So reflecting on all this, the power of dopamine, the allure of the instant fix, but also the deep human need for meaning and the potential to live by your values. The question for you, listening, is how will you use this understanding to navigate your own urges and consciously build your version of a truly rich and fulfilling life?